Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jen Trepic, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. This week, we're talking about camel milk. Like camels, the animals with a hump in the desert, camel milk. I'm really curious if you've heard of it. Maybe you've seen it. I've only seen it in headlines, to be perfectly honest. So there was an article that a friend sent to me. The headline read, "Is camel milk the next big dairy alternative?" So, as I do, I added it to my list for us to talk about, and here we are. Now, camel milk might be new to you. Full disclosure, it's not actually all that new. Nomadic cultures leaned on camel milk. Many Eastern countries use camel milk often. Today, it is produced commercially all over the world. Most of the time, though, you'll see it frozen or in powdered form. We're going to come back to all of that and even the taste and all that good stuff after we talk about why people might consider it and other reasons that you may want to think about if, is it the best option for you or even an option for you. So first of all, let's start with why people might hear or claim camel milk is, as this headline said, the next big dairy alternative. So first, we can look at the nutrient profile. It's pretty similar to cow's milk. It's a little lower in saturated fat, a little more protein. It has some quality fats like linoleic acid, unsaturated fats, and long-chain fatty acids. And then it also has a little bit more on the vitamin front than cow's milk also. So vitamin C, B vitamins, calcium, iron, potassium. And full disclosure, just like with cow's milk, the quality of the camel milk is going to depend on what the camel was fed, right? But in general, a half a cup of camel milk gives us 50 calories, 3 grams of fat, 5 grams of carbohydrates, 3 grams of protein, and then quite a bit of thiamine, which is a B vitamin, a fair amount of calcium, and then a bit of riboflavin, potassium, phosphorus, and vitamin C. Now, with the protein, it still has whey protein, but it seems from what I saw in the studies that it doesn't have beta-casein. So this might mean that for some people, they're better able to tolerate it. It depends what in cow milk, is creating the challenge for the person. In terms of the protein, right, it tends to be either whey or casein that's irritating. So camel milk still has whey. Camel milk also still has lactose. It's just less lactose than cow milk. So it might be better for some people who have challenges with lactose. It's still possible, though, to have a reaction. So decide for yourself, based on your typical response to lactose, if it's even worth testing the camel milk. Now, thinking about these nutrients and the higher amount of protein compared to cow milk, we can thank camel milk for supporting blood sugar balance and insulin sensitivity, and that bears out in the research. So studies show for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes, there's support from camel milk. Now, some of the studies were on animals, some were clinical trials. In the clinical trials, the recommended dose of camel milk was 500 milliliters per day, which is almost 17 ounces. That dosage led to the improvement of diabetes markers after 3 months in patients with diabetes. And there's something with the proteins in camel milk. So some of the research suggests that the proteins in camel milk act like insulin. So one of the things I read said that in a liter or about 4 cups of camel milk, it's almost like 52 units of insulin. Now, please speak to your doctor before you're exploring this further, but it might be interesting if the cost of insulin continues to rise. Not that camel milk is cost effective. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there's research to support this. Also with the proteins in camel milk, we see immune support. So there's lactoferrin and immunoglobulins in camel milk. Lactoferrin has antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, anti-inflammatory properties, and almost even like antioxidant properties too. We also know that whey protein may have some antioxidant properties. So for the mere fact that there's more protein in the camel milk than cow milk, this might be an option. I just don't really like calling this a milk alternative because it's still milk. It's still from an animal. So I really feel like that headline was misleading because the category of milk alternatives that we all think of is, plant-based, but I digress. If you hear people talking about camel milk for those undergoing cancer treatment or those on the autism spectrum, well, okay, so the research on the cancer piece is a little bit clearer. Again, it seems to track back to the antioxidant activities of the proteins. The gut health benefits may be the reason for the autism claims, although a lot of those stories or those claims are anecdotal. The research is not clear at all. In some of the studies, I think the studies themselves were flawed. All of them seem to be on really small sample sizes. So we just need more research. And I think on a similar note, there are a couple studies about camel milk and neurodegenerative diseases. And while promising, they're either on rats and mice or small sample sizes, but it is an indication that more research could be really interesting and potentially something new for these conditions. Now, with that said, as great as it might sound, I have a couple caveats, right? And all my caveats basically boil down to one thing, and that's practicality. Okay, so first, going back, recognizing that it still has whey, it still has some lactose, so it may not be a suitable alternative depending on your reason for not having cow milk, or frankly, I should say your reason for choosing alternative milk products, right? This might not be a practical alternative. Again, part of why it annoys me that they wrote that headline. And just like any allergic reaction, symptoms, if you're allergic to the camel milk, whether it's the whey or the lactose, symptoms can range from hives and swelling to difficulty breathing. And then I mentioned this at the beginning, the quality of the camel milk, just like the quality of cow milk, depends on what the camel ate, how it was raised, and all those kinds of things. Just like with everything, it seems that when it becomes commercialized, we tend to see a diminished nutrient density. So just some perspective there if this potentially becomes more popular. And then another piece that makes this pretty impractical is the cost. I'll get to the cost in a second, but here's why it's so expensive right now. So according to the USDA, there are around 5,000 camels in the United States as of 2023. For comparison, there's over 87 million cows in the US. That's potentially a story for another day. But let's also consider the fact that the US isn't exactly the natural habitat or climate for camels, but they're being shipped here for this. And besides the quantity of the camels themselves, there are even fewer camel dairies in the US. By the way, some fun facts about camels that play into this. So camels are mammals, and as such, they only produce milk after giving birth. And their pregnancies are 13 months long. So what this means is that it's even harder to get, and they produce a fraction of the amount of milk that cows do. Like camels produce about a third of what cows produce when they're producing milk. So all of this, right, back to basic 7th grade economics, low supply, increasing demand means an increase in prices, right? Practically speaking, you're probably not finding this at your neighborhood grocery store. So you can order it online, frozen or powdered. I did a little digging. I found one from a brand called Desert Farms. Now, by the way, I will note, a lot of the places said they had it and then it wasn't actually available. But I did find one. It was available. Brand is called Desert Farms. It's powder camel milk, organic, non-GMO. A 200-gram bag was over $67. And that was discounted. I think that was like 10% off. So they put like the price per ounce. It was almost $10 per ounce. And so, okay, price impractical, I think. There's also today a lot of debate about pasteurization. Camel milk is typically raw. This might be a pro or a con for you, depending on what makes sense for you. But I think in my category of practical, it means shelf life, if it's not pasteurized, right? We want to consider shelf life. We want to consider the fact that it's being shipped. If it's frozen, is it staying frozen, right? That's really important. So it just adds a whole host of considerations. And studies show that camel milk may contain organisms that cause, sicknesses that, we're not used to. There's one called Mediterranean fever. So just choosing for yourself. I do think it'll be interesting to see if camel milk takes off more widely it seems like we're already seeing this become, like other food industry products with the fact that they're shipping camels to the US. But time will tell if this is really the industrialization of another animal. We'll see. With all of this, if you want to try it, it's not difficult to add once you procure the camel milk. Remember, you're ordering it frozen or powdered, most likely. You can use it the same way you use any other milk or milk substitute. Admittedly, I have not tried it, but according to the internet, it tastes kind of like milk, but it does have a distinctive flavor that's described as a little salty. And if you try it, please send me a message. I want to hear about your experience, what you paid for it, how you used it. I want to hear all the things. So wrapping this up, going back to the headline, is camel milk the next big dairy alternative? Well, it's still dairy, so I don't know that we can call it a dairy alternative, but this health coach is saying probably not so fast, right? It's not all that accessible. While it may be better tolerated by those who can't do lactose, it's certainly better for those who can't do casein. I'm just not sure it's going to take off like the other plant-based milks have. Well, friends, as always, I'm your host, Jen Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I am at Jen Trepeck, JenNTrepeck. Website is asaladwithasideofries.com. Pick your platform, send a message. I love hearing from you, your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me as your health coach. And friend, if you are not already, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/saladwithasideofries. This shows your support for this podcast, this community, and your health. You'll get this week's recipe for the best healthy turkey chili. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.